Davis, I hope you're okay with me recording this.
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so this is going to be a quick intro to leading and Taskscaler for the engineer who's trying to figure out if there's a problem with fleeting and Taskscaler. There's this new autoscaling framework we have. You can read more about it at the next autoscaling blueprint. There's a whole thing. Aaron just merged some good docs for how it works. I'll see if I can find those. But for engineers who are triaging bugs and trying to decide, does this involve the new system or not? I wanted to try to answer that question primarily, so you could just kind of start to get the first look at code reviews, at issues, at bugs, etc. Because this autoscaling system, fleeting and Taskscaler, is the way that Runner is going to autoscale across the board in the future. So we should know how it works on all of the teams. Okay, so real quick, let me grab my thing. Can you see my screen okay, Davis? Is it?
Yep. Looks good.
All right, cool. All right, so this is a configuration that uses Taskscaler and fleeting. And I want to point out the first thing to look for if you're trying to decide if this has to do with fleeting is what's in the config. So for example, anything under runner's autoscaler is going to automatically tell you that this is the new autoscaler that delegates to Taskscaler. So you'll find the code for this under GitLab runner, executors, internal, autoscaler. And what it does is it actually is an executor or provider that delegates to another provider that has a Taskscaler and provides the execution environments from a host of VMs managed with the fleeting plugin interface. So you'll see, there's a couple of things here. This is the plugin configuration. This is the credentials file that allows the plugin to connect to these VMs. So, Davis, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, is it possible you could put this config in there? It would be kind of ridiculous, but if you put in this config and the executor was not set to instance, that this would all just be ignored anyway.
I'm not actually sure what would happen if you did that. That would be weird, but I don't know.
Yeah. I was just going to say, just in case, if you had some kind of
yeah.
Stein
Let me see if I can find out and come back to you. Yeah, I'm not sure what would happen there. So instance executor, that's actually brings up a good point here. This is another thing that indicates that we're using this Taskscaler executor, because instance means that the job has a whole instance, meaning the entirety of a machine, a VM. We're in discussion about whether, like how to sort of simplify this config. There's a blueprint for that I'm going to come back around to. But for now, let's just sort of assume that that instance is primarily used with autoscaling, with Taskscaler and fleeting. So the sections here, this is for the plugin. So the fleeting plugin is that executable that is per cloud provider. So this will be cloud provider specific. It will point to a credential that will allow you to attach to a cloud provider. In this case, I'm just using the one from gcloud because I'm using GCE VMs. This is the name of the instance group that I created out of band. And this is the project that it's in the zone. So this actually gives you a nice pointer to where the underlying compute resources are as well. Good to know about. Connector config. So the fleeting plugin system has two interfaces. One is this, instance group interface. The other interface is the connector interface. So once it gets an instance, it needs to be able to connect to it. And because that's, could be different for Windows, for Linux, etc. So this is just some information about once I have this thing, once I have a VM from an instance group in Google, How do I connect to it? And this is what the username is to use, basically. This username will work with these credentials in order to allow me to SSH into the instance. So that's, and then the other part, of course, is autoscaling policy, which is familiar from Docker machine autoscaling. So this doesn't automatically tell you we're using the new autoscaling, just that we're using autoscaling in general. It's these two things to look for primarily: the plugin config and the connector config. That should tell you this is a new system. Any questions about that before I go on to VM isolation?
Nope.
Cool. So we, of course, in SAS, the reason that SAS has been working on this is because we're building the Mac runners on AWS with this new infrastructure. This is flushing out the infrastructure will be for everybody, but it's also like primarily for this one niche product that we're building. So that's why the SAS team has the most knowledge, and Aaron, about this new auto scaling system. For Macs, because they're slow to come and go, we stick jobs inside VMs. And so you'll find us using VM isolation. But this is not necessarily only for Macs. One of the things that we've changed with this new system is this setting here, capacity per instance. So this actually should be another flag that tells you, oh, this is something involving nesting, or maybe this is involving the new autoscaler, because this is that's the only system that uses capacity per instance. You can run more than one job on an instance. Here I'm running 32, which is kind of weird. I'm not actually using Mac. Mac is stuck with 2 and no more. But I'm actually, what I have set up here, I just happened to have this set up when I sat down to do this demo. So I'm running nested VMs on Linux. So in the future, we may actually use nesting and use these things for like Linux as well as Mac, as well as like other things. This is basically a way to manage isolation and multiple jobs per instance. So if you see VM isolation, it's definitely the new system. So I mentioned nesting, but I didn't really tell you what it is. So there's tests, there's runner, and it has a library called Taskscaler that it pulls into the binary. So this new autoscaling executor, internal autoscaler, uses Taskscaler to provide the execution environment. That's part of the binary. There's another thing which is outside, a separate binary, which is the plugin. And you'll see here, I actually say which binary to start with this plugin configuration. So there's another binary that we start and attach. Taskscaler does this, right? That library that we pulled in. So there's 2 binaries. Okay, that's runner, the new autoscaler, Taskscaler, and a fleeting plugin. Okay, fleeting is another library we pull in, which is pretty much just the interface to that plugin. Now, nesting is a way to put have a small control plane in each one of those instances. So there's like, maybe the fleeting plugin creates an instance group and you have 10 different instances. Well, on each one of those instances, if we're going to put more than one job or more than one VM, we need somebody inside of there to create and destroy those VMs. So that's where nesting comes in. So nesting is actually a client and a server. The server is baked into those instances. And so when the instance starts up, it has a nesting server that it runs on a socket, a Unix socket. So if we're gonna use nesting, we don't have to, but if we do use nesting for VM isolation, then when we do SSH to that instance, we make one extra hop. So there's a nesting client inside runner, inside this new autoscaler, that will say, oh, if you do have VM isolation, okay, now that I've SSH'd to this instance where I want to run my job, also make a gRPC call to this socket to create a VM. And that will also give you the IP address locally, and then do one more tunneled SSH inside of that nested VM. So it's just one extra step that runner knows how to do when it sees VM isolation. So that's what VM isolation is here.
What
And
was
because,
sorry, go ahead.
because it's a second SSH, there's a username and a password. There's no security issues here because you already own the instance. If you're SSH'd in to access that Unix socket, you own the instance. So it doesn't matter what the username and password is. So we just put it right here. That's baked into the second image, which is baked into the instance template. So yeah, you got a question?
What were our use cases and reasoning for having VM isolation? What benefits do we get out of it?
For Mac, primarily performance, just because of the restrictions of it takes so long to start and stop instances that we pay for the underlying hardware for at least 24 hours. And then it was taking 40 minutes to like replace an instance on the same hardware. And it was also taking 30 minutes to spin up a new VM. So we just want to be able to reuse those instances. So it was kind of an efficiency thing. It's also a way for us to dip our toes into the space of packing more than one job into an instance for efficiency of resource usage, which extends beyond Mac. So I've been actually, this is sort of like, that's the end of the how to detect, fleeting. This is sort of some experimental thing that I've been working on, running more than one nested VM in Linux. If you, when you have these big Linux machines and you have a bunch of jobs, if it's the same job, it'll probably be bottlenecked on the same resource. But if you have a variety of jobs, some need a lot of CPU, some need a lot of memory, some need a lot of disk or network. If you can bin pack them in there in a way that they maximize the usage of all the resources, like 5 CPU heavy jobs and 5 IO jobs, then you can get more efficient use of your machines overall. Like the cost of a N1 standard 32 is 32 times as much as N1 standard 1. So it doesn't really help to pack the same job in all of them, but maybe if we do a little bit in bin packing. And then there's this idea of sort of bringing out isolation as an explicit orthogonal aspect of all of the configuration is helpful because there's other kinds of isolation as well, like Docker or WebAssembly or stuff like that.
So these are other ways that we could potentially use nesting.
Yeah, either nesting. I don't know if nesting it specifically would be used. Nesting is a little bit more of an implementation detail, which is why we don't. Well, we do say nesting host there, but that's for VM. But I think the important part to focus on is that like isolation is an orthogonal aspect of how you want to run the job. So there's where and how, and of course when. Okay, cool. So yeah, actually, since I'm here, I'm gonna do a quick demo just because it's fun. You got any other questions?
Not at the moment. I'm excited we're doing this. I feel like
All
this
right.
is helpful.
It's
Even though
yeah.
I kind of gleaned a lot of this from working in,
Yeah. The reason this demo actually might be also helpful for this topic because it's helpful to see what log entries show up when you use nesting. So from the perspective of like debugging nesting, it's good to know what the config looks like, but also what the log entries look like for successful and unsuccessful. So I have a couple instances here. This is my development instance. I have an instance group here. Let's see, where are you? It's called Linux nesting. Okay. Has no machines right now, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start a job. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, hello, Davis. And I'm going to commit that to the main branch. I come over here and look at CI/CD, and there's a pending job. Oh, this is exciting. We got a pipeline running. What is happening over here? Well, if you look here, you will see that we are preparing an instance executor. So we picked up this job on my local machine. What is it doing? Oh, this is kind of interesting. Increasing the instances. Okay, so you can see this. These are the kind of log lines that you'll see. You'll also see from the plugin itself. So the plugin actually connects standard in and standard out back to the main binary. And it uses standard in and standard out for like communication, but it creates another set of sockets and redirects it. So you get log lines from the plugin, even though it's in a different binary. And you'll see those annotated here. So when you see plugin fleeting, plugin Google Compute plugin, these are actually from the plugin binary itself. So that's another debugging tip. They all get, they are from the plugin, but they get rolled into the debug logs here, which is great. It was waiting for a create operation, and that finished, which is super great. And then it was updating instance metadata with like a key, I think, waiting for an operation, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, a couple other things. And then it actually runs the job here. Blah, 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 runs a job, cleaning up. And I think that's it. Let's go back and see if that job actually succeeded. Oh, Davis. Yeah, there it is. So this ran in a GCE instance inside of a VM in that instance. So it's like level 2. Yeah, and you can, I've set the capacity to 32, so I could have 32 Hello Davises simultaneously running in this one instance, and they're isolated from each other, theoretically. Yeah, so those are the things to look for those are the things to look for, in the logs when you are using, the new autoscaling system. Yeah, anything else?
I don't think so. I will mention, I'm pretty sure you need at least an N1 or N2 machine to do that on GCP, right?
Yeah, I think you
The
do.
only ones that actually do support nesting.
Yeah. What do we
Things
have here?
I lost
Yeah,
some time when I
I have
first
one here.
to do that on a different machine family.
Yeah, that sucks if you put it on the wrong machine.
Yeah, and I all the time trying to figure out how to like get
Yeah.
KVM. Why am I missing my KVM device? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so like when I set this up, there was a couple steps I had to do. First of all, you need a VM where the actual job will run. That's this worker template. I just keep snapshotting this VM. That gets exported as an image, and it gets put inside the disk backing that instance template. So this is the same as Mac. You have an image where it runs, you put it as a file or as a configuration or a clonable VM inside the host, which is the actual instance. So I snapshot this one, take an image, put it inside of here, like upload it to here. Then the host is the one that has the fleet, that has the nesting server running. So it's able to create the VMs with the worker template. So then I snapshot this as an instance template. So I get a bunch of these hosts created. This is an example. It's from a template based on the host template. So it has, and as part of the startup, it has a thing that runs nesting. So if I say host template 9, I scroll to the bottom, first thing it does is it starts nesting. So it's
Joseph, what is that command, Joseph Burnett?
you don't know the Joseph
Oh,
Burnett
user.
command?
I'm not. I guess I see the statue
It's a
now.
popular Unix command. It's called file not found. It's just, yeah, as Joseph Burnett, here's the nesting socket that I created ahead of time. Or no, sorry, I didn't create it ahead of time. This is where to put it. And this, notice that this temp nesting sock is also referenced here with the Unix part in front of it, because this is the isolation part. Once we get inside that VM, we need to connect to the nesting server. We do it through that Unix socket. So we need to be able to dial here and SSH with these credentials.
Got it.
We dial here to create the VM. Sorry, we dial here to create the VM. Once the VM is created, we use the IP address from here. Actually, let me see if I can get inside one of these instances. It'll be disappearing soon.
I'm guessing this might be just exposing my lack of Unix and Linux knowledge, but I also learned recently while I'm creating some unit tests that there is a character limit on the path to a Unix socket, that you cannot exceed 108 characters. Otherwise, it'll start telling you that you cannot bind.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I only learned that because my temporary directory that was created was a very lengthy directory name.
Oh yeah. Let's see if I can do this. Temp nesting sock, nesting list. Oh, there's none. I'm going to create, oh boy, what am I going to create? Here's another interesting thing. Here, the image, there should be an image here somewhere. Oh yeah, image. This is that worker template that, you want to create. Again, we're talking about nesting here. So, and I create a worker template. Connection failed. Oh, it's because my guy is going away. We have a minute. We have another minute. So I'm just going to go ahead and start another job here. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to create a VM just so you can see what it looks like.
Cool.
So I told it to keep them around for 5 minutes, and I've been yakking for 5 minutes. But here we should get a new VM in just a sec. Let's have a look. Yep, all right. Preparing, resolving secrets, articulating splines. Here is a VM. And it's Linux, so it starts fast, which is great. Come here. One thing that's really helpful in debugging these issues, knowing these pieces, is being able to like SSH into the instance and run the nesting command yourself. Or in the case of Mac turns around and runs a tart command. So it's even useful to be able to run the tart command yourself, just so you can kind of figure out, so you can like unravel it piece by piece. So like, that's why these are good things to know for initial triage. It's coming up a little slow. I don't know what's going on. Must be Tuesday. I could always start my host machine too. I try to spin these things down. They're kind of expensive.
Oh yeah, I started learning that the hard way with my personal GCP. I had that like $300 credit you get. Start up
Oh
a
yeah.
GCP, and I totally forgot about it, and suddenly got I think like a $70 bill because of one of my little stable diffusion accelerator optimized machines.
Yeah, it looks like they're not waking up this morning. Usually they start up a lot faster than that. I'm gonna stop the share and wrap it up. But yeah, so that's the deal. You can SSH in there, you can run that command and create and destroy the VM, the nested VMs as a debugging process. So,
And so all
okay.
this stuff can at least help someone determine whether or not the fleeting plugin is in use. It may not tell them whether or not it's the issue, but at least you can get
Yeah.
started.
Mhm.
At
Yeah.
least
So
to
if you find yourself debugging one of these issues, you look at the config, if it involves the new auto scaling system. If you want to dig into it further, what kind of log lines to look for. Is it getting into the plugin? Is it finding the plugin? Is it a problem with nesting, with tart? So you can kind of get a hint and then get to that level by SSHing into the instance, and then maybe even, with those credentials, GitLab, you can even SSH into one of the nested VMs and try running the job manually inside of there too. So, yeah. All right, I'll shut it down now.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. See ya.